Some of you may even know him during the days of his career as Fearless. You may also recognize him as one of the hosts on WRD at one time in his career. He is a person who's traveled to many places in the world, including Egypt and China. He is a student of culture. He has, I think, 1, 2, maybe 3 master's degrees. He has studied Japanese language and Japanese culture. He is author of several important entries into encyclopedia and also chapters. He is writing 3 books. He is just a dynamic professor, PhD in Africology and African American Studies from Temple University, and always someone who has inspired many, many people throughout the world. I'm just really delighted that he's speaking for us at the Molefi, Kete, Asante Institute lectures, and we look forward to listening to him today. And I told the audience this morning on WRD that Dr. Aaron Smith could speak on anything, but he'll probably speak about Afrocentric Futurism. But I am just delighted and honored to be able to bring to you, my young brother, Dr. Aaron Smith. Dr. Aaron Smith, it's all yours. We're all gonna put our audio on mute, and we're ready to listen to you.
How long you want me to talk, Doc?
About 40 minutes, hour, and then we have questions.
Got you. I miss y'all. It's a lot of people, I haven't seen in a while. I know y'all probably thinking, hey, I haven't seen him in a while. And I want you to know the feeling is mutual. And it's always important not just to defer to the elders, but to greet the room, as I was always taught. And that human connection, I think, is very important. So I just want to take at least 5 to 10 seconds to connect with the people, tell you all that I miss you, possibly as much as some of y'all miss me. And I look forward to the future of finding ways to utilize advancements in technology to increase our human connection, right? So I'm trying to work on getting a free voice, if there's such a thing, with tenure at the university, and at the same time, finding ways to more effectively utilize technology to service my community. But interestingly enough, most importantly, is that I'm a student of Dr. Molefi Kete Asante, who one day said to me, have you ever considered the PhD in African American Studies? And it always stayed with me, because the ability for somebody to see something in you that you don't see in yourself can exponentially change the trajectory of your entire life. So every time that I share words with people, I think that I could be having that same impact that Dr. Asante had on me simply by asking a question, right? And I would like to start with a clip from one of my favorite videos that I always tell everybody to watch from Dr. Asante, because of the opening remarks that Dr. Asante gave. And I'm like an encyclopedia of some of these videos. I show them in class so often. But when people have these questions that Dr. Asante was posing about the Asian community, I would refer you to, before I begin, this clip that I'm going to share with you called Decolonizing the University. And this is arguably my favorite address for beginners in Afrocentricity. And I'm just going to play about a minute of it. And I want you to see how relevant, these perspectives are. And this is Dr. Asante giving an understanding historically of possibly why we're seeing some of these contributions to the Proud Boys and similar worldviews from the Asian community. You can have a listen here.
This is to set the tone for this discussion, which I hope to cover many aspects of the trouble with understanding Africa, because by virtue of Europe's engagement with Africa at a very negative level, it has also impacted and affected people throughout the world. Even in Asia, I see the same experience. That is the experience of Europe having colored the minds of Asians regarding Africa.
Powerful and relevant. Yeah, I just thought that was really beautiful that, where other people might be confused, we as Africologists can add clarity through the ability to operationalize historical context in a way to bring order out of chaos, as they would say in the ancient tradition. But with that being said, let me go ahead and begin. I don't have a long presentation because I know that I am already fired up, but I do have a PSA at the end of this presentation that you might not want to miss. So let me see if I can do it this way. Show. Yeah, I like to have the video panel to see the people while we're talking. I just wanted to see y'all. Hey, everybody. All right. I see you, good brother. Miss that popcorn. We'll be back to this too soon. Afrocentric Futurism. I'm going to get right into it because I was doing a book on Afrofuturism, and I talked so much about culture and grounding in the department, and I listened to, and I've been reading. Shout out to you, Dr. Dove, because I have been catching up heavily on my reading and grounding myself in culture in a way that's helping me to better understand and recognize contemporary phenomena. And I've been seeing with this Afrofuturism thing, like I've seen with a lot of other movements I'll mention later, this lack of historical grounding, this lack of cultural grounding, this lack of African values, you know, within the organizational structures. And one of the things I put up there recently, I've had a lot of frustrations because with this recent conversation about the future of technology, I know you've heard a lot about Bitcoin and Dogecoin and cryptocurrencies, and many are arguing this is one of the greatest transfers of wealth in the history of humankind. And my frustration isn't about where you stand on these currencies. My frustration is that we don't seem to be engaged in the conversation from our own perspective. And I couldn't articulate effectively the Afrocentric perspective on this transference of wealth. And I should be able to do that because we should have conversations, even if they're critical conversations. Even when we reject certain ideologies and certain movements and realities, we at least have some consensus or understanding about where the field stands, you know, and we're not there having the conversation. And I think that's dangerous. I think that's dangerous. And I'm looking, I show that image, you know, of the temple walls where they're saying, is that a spaceship? Is that a helicopter, right? Because for some reason, we've divorced technological innovation from Afrocentric grounding. And I said, how was this? Let me get loose right away. How was this wicked trick done? And then recently I got a confession to make because I realized through my studies a trick that was played on my generation. I talk to my AAR peeps all the time. Shout out to my elders, and I try to connect them with the voice and perspectives of the young people. And one of the things I always say is, you know, when you went to school, you were able to pay for it. When you went to school, there was the ability to get a city and a government job with a high school diploma. When you got home from the war, there was something called the GI Bill, even if it was disproportionately given away. Like, I try to let my elders know that it's not all laziness and it's not all the fact that I try to show them. And then my elders often try to show me things. And one of the things that my elders always try to show me is the practical application and potential of civic engagement and the power of the vote. And too many in my generation have disregarded that potential and that power and have rejected not only the potential of the vote and civic engagement, but their elders as a result of their support of it. And I said, who created this division amongst my people? I started reading and learning about the various obstacles and this new the protecting the purity of the ballot, that the conversation in Texas, right, where the words were literally on this new recent initiative in Texas. They said to protect the purity of the ballot, and the man was confronted on the floor of Congress saying, do you know the history of this term and disenfranchising African Americans? And I was like, wow, somebody got in between this younger generation and the elders, and they've caused us to utilize our energy and our idealism to reject and even go against the wisdom of our elders who didn't put their faith in voting, but understood it as a strategic tool for transformative change. And I said, I got to come clean when I talk to the elders again and say, they got me, y'all. They had me tricked for a while, thinking that it was just so silly to vote while they kept electing all these judges, while they kept deciding local budgets, while they kept, you know, building prisons and closing schools. And I didn't even see how that was all politics because somebody got in between me and I just got to tell the story. Let me just go ahead. I got 30 minutes left to tell. Let me just tell the whole story. So shouts out, if you don't have the book, The Demise of the Inhuman, I think it's up to us in the future to protect our future and maintain our future by making sure that we keep our names and our scholarship and our perspectives alive. So the reason why I start with this quote is not just because she was such a phenomenal scholar, but also that she came through the department. And if we're not going to uplift and remember and continue to reinforce, said ideologies and perspectives and quotes, then who will, right? One of the leading intellectual paradigms in the study of African phenomena during the past 2 decades has been the idea of Afrocentricity, conceived and developed in the writings of Amma Mazama, Linda James Myers, Maulana Karenga, Ruth Rivera, and others. Afrocentricity has become the dominant theoretical method in the critique and examination of African and African-American phenomena. And of course, I would always say, Dr. Molefi, Kete, Asante. So I'm studying this Afrofuturism, right? I'm gonna give you the definition. Mark Derry's definition of Afrofuturism is a speculative fiction that treats African-American themes and addresses African-American concerns in the context of 20th century techno-culture, more generally, African-American signification that appropriate images of technology and the prosthetically enhanced future might, for want of a better term, be called Afrofuturism. I'm gonna let y'all meditate on that for at least a few seconds, because I got some Afrocentrists who understand the power of language and how culture is rooted in language. So you might want to just look that one over for a moment, because I'm looking at technology and prosthetically enhanced future, and I didn't see Sankofa. I saw a whole lot of looking forward, but I didn't see in this definition enough looking back. I didn't see an ancestral connection. You'll get it. Yeah, I'm preaching to the choir today, but Afrocentricity is a quality of thought or action that allows the African person to view himself or herself as an agent or actor in human history, right? We're talking about agency now, not simply as someone who is acted upon. It provides a perspective from the subject place. I'll bring it back one time. See, here we're talking about these technological advancements, prosthetically enhanced future, right? Our concerns, speculative fiction, right? But here we're talking about being the subject of our own narrative and not objects. Here we're talking about liberation and agency. So I said, how do I reconcile, as an Afrocentric scholar, this investigation of Afrofuturism? Okay, it provides a perspective from a subject place, not from the margins of being victims or being an object in someone else's world, right? And then I had to look at what it meant. My recognition of the numerous ways Afrofuturism emphasizes African agency and the reimagining of the world and the universe from an African diasporic perspective led me to interrogating the connections between Afrofuturism and Afrocentricity. This investigation has culminated in the production of a body of Afrocentric scholarship. The book is on the way, which takes a more in-depth look at the tensions created by historical and cultural dislocation of African peoples and consciousness as it relates to the Afrofuturistic project and projections. If you imagine in spaceships and you imagine in transhumanism, but you haven't even imagined being African, then we have to have a conversation. You can make a movie, you can make a book, you can make up terms, but if you don't love yourself, if you don't know yourself, if you don't know your history or see the value in ancestral connections, then we can get all the technology in the world, lifesavers and sabers and flying this and that and all kind of different stuff. And then you looking like, where is the culture though? Where is the culture? I see a lot of technological innovation, but the last time I saw somebody confuse technological innovation with civilization, it was a European conceptualization. So if you're just thinking about the future through the eyes of your oppressor, then we need to have something different then I said, what I'm doing ain't Afrofuturistic, solely. I need to have something a little more grounded, a little more rooted in, and that's how I came up with a different term. The study and implementation of the early ancient Kemetic technogenesis of pioneering cutting-edge African cosmologies, creativity, and culture from an African diasporic-centered perspective. Very different. This foundational historiography and worldview centers past, present, and future African expression, identity, evolution of thought, and civilization. Afrocentric futurism analyzes phenomena through the foundational lens of Kemetic science, philosophy, spirituality, and related methodologies. I'm not just going into outer space. We not just anime floating around, imagining things flying, and just because the person, you know, got dark skin, we thinking somehow that's our way. Just as Afrocentricity centers the African within her or his own historical and cultural reality, Afrofuturism will gain and grow exponentially through centering Afrocentricity in the agency-rich reshaping of the world around us through the lens of the children of the diaspora as subject rather than object. So I think it was a philosopher named Biggie Smalls. He said, first things first. So before we start trying to get them to be innovative technological wizards and engineers and STEM, and then they need to know that they're Africans and love themselves and their history and their ancestors and respect their elders and their culture and their tradition. Let's do that before we send them off into space. Because sometimes there's such an emphasis. Even my brothers and sisters in the STEM field, I understand the utilitarian value. I understand the focus on scientific innovation and advancement, but sometimes I see a void where the humanities, you know, could be of great service. Connecting the circles instead of the dots, as I like to say. Therefore, I am using an Afrocentric futuristic chronological connection to modern technology in two primary ways. One, realize the natural historical relationship between Africa and advanced technologies, which could significantly serve to increase agency and confidence of Afrocentric futurists engaging with digital innovation. Because that's a big thing right now. People keep saying what's for us and what's African. That's like people when I used to work at MLK High School and they say college ain't for me. And I say, yeah, the first college was Waset, later called Luxor by the Greeks. If you haven't seen Dr. Asante's video, he talks about that too, right? Like there's this whole idea of a course in college. A course is a block on a pyramid. The last course you take is a capstone course, you know, and I'm looking at these young Africans telling me math ain't for them. They gave the world math. And Pythagoras with his theorem came to a pyramid. They would say, like, and I'm looking at them saying, wow, they really think that something is other than them simply because someone was so skillful in stealing it from them and repackaging it and presenting it as their own. But if they realized it from their own historical relationship, they say, oh, what's this blockchain thing? Like a juggler when he got 10 balls in the air and he can grab 3 more. Throw me a bowling pin, bro. It don't even matter. This is my stuff. I'm not going to be superstitious and scared of it to the point where the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of humankind takes place since Mansa Musa was giving out gold. And all I can say is that ain't African. Last I checked, what isn't African? If human beings are African, and every innovation I see has a black root, whether it's rock and roll or the cotton gin or language or the worship of a deity, everything has an African root. Why would I just be so anti-historical and say, oh, we must not have innovated? Let me get to it. Because this type of technology they're talking about. This type of technology that people are talking about when they say, oh, these devices are no. We need to reappropriate them for a conscious Afrocentric purpose. But I never concede to colonization. Do not compromise and concede with colonization and conquest do not. I don't give them anything. I don't give them credit for anything but taking and changing, bastardizing, revising, and repackaging. I am not going to say they created Christianity or Islam. I'm going to say what they did with it. I'm going to say the way they changed the names. I can look and see the negative confessions and see, I know where you got it from. I'm not going to give you credit for inventing it. I'm going to chastise and critique you justly and wisely for what you've done with it. But I know that we started it. This is our stuff. And if you tell a young person that, instead of just telling them to put the device down, which ain't going to happen, you could tell them to repurpose. Let me go ahead and get into it. So shouts out to Jesse Eugene Russell. Shouts out to Super Duper Hidden Figures sister. So we wouldn't have no GPS. Okay. And of course we have the web with the computations, the scientific computations. So a lot of this stuff that people are talking about when, talking about all this technology and all that, this is our stuff. That's what we did. That's what we did. And made Jack Daniels to boot, right? They said the recipe for Jack Daniels. Like, show me something that don't go back to its root. And I don't care what color the flower is. If you've ever gardened in your life, oh my gosh, let me just go ahead and get to it. Because you can't prune a problem. You got to get to the root and get to the truth. So the question I'm attempting to answer with this volume is, how can an Afrocentric methodological approach to Afrofuturism effectively remedy the disproportionate influence of Eurocentrism in many Black speculative spaces? while revealing a more historically accurate and exponentially greater transformative liberatory epistemology. I want to give you something not just to make you say, whoa, and this is amazing. We want to give you something to get free. We're not talking art for art's sake when people are dying in the street. I saw they had a girl in the 6th grade was shooting up the school. I said 6th grade and a woman. Like times are changing in all the wrong ways. We had a sister, you know, what is she, 16, right? Get shot by the police. Like 10 years ago, we was talking about brothers that was 30 something. Now we talking about sisters that are 15 and 16. If I'm gonna give you something, I gotta give you something to get free. That's like you hungry. I'm talking to you about anything else but eating. I think Sister Soldier said we are at war. Afrocentric futurism as a result of the foundational contributions of Afrocentricity on countless aspects of modern Black art, film, writings, and other manifestations, I found it prudent to describe this particular iteration of study and expression of futuristic thought and creativity as Afrocentric futurism. It needed a new term because I was not doing what they were doing. No offense, we adding on. So the world's a stage. Be your own writer and director. And this is what I used to see. This is a movie called Contact from the 90s with Jodie Foster. And I was like, wait a minute. Are we envisioning the only future that we've been given? You know that quote about dimming all potential for light to enter the mind of the African, right? You know, and you know, like in the Miseducation, when he talks about, you know, circumscribing the potentialities simply by denial and omission of certain information, where you would go to the back door, create one for yourself. Like, why is this the future, y'all? Why, when many Africans think of the future, they think of stuff? I know why, because I'm showing you why. But I want to let's do some reverse engineering today. And let's walk back the programming and say, yeah, why is that the future? Why is the future always in an apocalyptic Earth setting or a super technologically advanced space setting? Why can't it be in a super balanced, peaceful Earth setting? If we've been at war perpetually for thousands of years, maybe we get over that. Maybe we get mature and say, in between all of these, you know, military engagements, we end up talking anyway. So why don't we just skip the murder of 1 million people and go straight to talking? There's never a movie about the futuristic movie where people don't need to engage that way, like beasts, and don't need to incinerate people and blow their body parts into oblivion. Like this, that's not the future. That's never the future. When somebody says a futuristic movie, you think in this, because this is the future they see. Because they're on their Christopher Columbus even to this day. Never settled, never balanced, never in harmony with nature, never in harmony with other people, especially darker peoples of the planet, always on the move, always looking to stick a flag in somewhere else, and you don't even see no nature in half of these. Oh my gosh, you telling me an African future and you don't see no tree? Where's the nature, y'all? But ask Africans. Oh, I'm writing the science fiction, I'm writing this, and we're gonna be floating with the, look at this. Look at this. This is Star Wars. Some of y'all saw the original in the movie theater. I know. But how is this the future? No color, no ancestral connection, no life. But as children, they had us thinking, this is where we headed, and this is better. This is better than sitting at the foot of your grandmother and getting mother wit and hearing the stories of your people. This is better than learning how to pluck a watermelon and listen to it to know if it's right before. This is better. The door's gonna slide and go. And we sat and we ate our popcorn and oh my gosh, I can't wait for this. So all the trees are gone. Where's the nursery at? You watch the whole movie, you ain't see no babies. Nobody pregnant. No, like, come on, y'all. This ain't our way of viewing life and creation and innovation. So we have been given someone else's viewpoint, like the Viewmaster games, you know, back in the day, to such a degree that we can't even see outside of the destructive toy that has been like superimposed onto our faces. It's like a Viewmaster has been sewn onto our faces, and no matter where we turn, all we can see is a Eurocentric conceptualization of what is to come. So all we see is either everything falling apart here, and we're lucky enough to float away in some, look at this nonsense. And the Star Trek ain't no better. How you breathing? Last I checked, didn't the plants even give off the oxygen? Nobody asked that. Nobody said how they breathing with no plants. I've never heard that question asked from somebody. I know a lot of people like Star Trek, and nobody ever said, I got one question though. Not only are they in zero gravity, how are they even breathing? Okay, I'm gonna keep it going. And limited blackness. And I've said before, I have a havoc barbaric theory based on Hanna-Barbera, who created the Flintstones with no blacks in the past and the Jetsons with no blacks in the future. And we grew up watching no blacks in the past, no blacks in the future, and wonder why we dislocated today and can't even imagine a future where we're centered, because it's hard for us to even imagine a future that we're there. So it's Challenge Day. Challenge Day. Shouts out to my Black Panther fans. And the quote he says, we watch from the mountains, right? We watch from outside the universities, right? And your technological advancements have been overseen by a child who scoffs at, and I inserted, African tradition. So when you watch the movie next time, and then that scene where he said, your technological advancements have been overseen by a child. I listened to Dr. Alana Karanga one night on WRD, I think it was, and he said, imagine if the grandchild in your house was put in charge of the house. He said, that's what we're dealing with the last people to join the human family leading the planet. That's why within 400 years, the earth is destroyed and the water is dirty and the air is dirty and war is the main way. He said, imagine your grandchild had to pay the rent and the mortgage and go shopping. He said, the house will be gone in a couple months, if not in a couple of days, because somebody left a stove on, because a child was in charge. But if you're going to follow that child and get down on the rug and say, what's the future like with the child? Is one thing if you just entertaining the child's imagination. But when you sit down on the rug and talk to a child and give that child attention, you don't operationalize their imagination in the real world when you go outside. When the child says, I made a car that could run on gummy bears, you don't go outside and put Afrocentric views of nature as the highest technological superstructure, and the human body as its crown cosmic jewel of symbiotic, synergistic sophistication deserves greater attention. Everybody's looking outside of themselves for technology. Oh, this is good technology. Oh, this is sophisticated technology. Can none of it touch your brain? Your brain does more computations. Your human body performs more activities in a millisecond than half of these supercomputers will in a lifetime. Your heart's beating, your lungs pumping, your brain's this, everything's happening at the same time. Millions of things happening at the same time. But you, with all that technology that is the miracle of a human being, is looking at a box of plastic talking about this is so deep and complicated. Ain't a computer in the world that got 5 different forms of liquid in it that all have different functions that carry messages. Like, the liquid carries messages, and the body can read the nutrients in the liquid and decipher the messages and then throw out what it don't want, man. But we don't look at ourselves like that, because if we did, we take better care of ourselves. And I always say, more of us dying from grease than dying from guns. But let me get back to it. Even when ancient Africans were looking at the heavens and charting the stars, there remained a clear connection between the earthly and celestial beings. So when people say the same thing that makes up human beings is what makes up stardust, so why would we envision a future of returning to the stars as some type of colonial conquest? Wouldn't that be a return? Or is it just a coincidence that everything in the stars is the same thing that's in us? In the African conceptualization, as above, so below, we wasn't looking at that like somewhere we've never been. We were more looking at that like somewhere we came from. So when you hear the stories of the Anunnaki and all that, we're not talking about the stars as some distant thing, the same way in the ancient African tradition, we weren't talking about the divine as some distant, ancient, set apart thing. That's why there's so much understanding about becoming, actualization, right? Sitting in the seat of, behaving as. So when you make these confessions, you're actually saying, this day, even though I'm a mortal human being that's imperfect, I have not lied. I have not, because I'm going to try my best to embody this God energy. So when somebody who understands that ancient African tradition reads in Psalms, ye are gods, children of the Most High God, they don't trip. And it's not even a dogma conversation. It's, oh yeah, we from that, so we could become that. Earthy as technologically advanced, because a lot of times people see them as mutually exclusive. I can either be, with my beeswax and my sage, or I could be in the computer lab. And I'm like, or no, right? The interplay is evidenced through the merging of stars and human imagery. You see Newt, right? And the whole idea about going in and then coming back out. So the representation of the feminine, not only as the divine, but as the universal and the sustainer and complex cosmologically, right? So, okay, creation, but here you see how it's applied. You see somebody saying, I'm not going to look at a woman's body as something to be disposed of, disregarded, disrespected, you know, or utilized just for pleasure. I'm going to appreciate the sophistication of the process of creation in such a way that it helps me to understand my place in the world, like John Henry Clark says about the compass, and the timing as far as the night and the day, and the connection between man, earth, and the heavens. So when I see a woman, the last thing I'm going to do is be treating her the way, oh my gosh, let me not go off. Okay. Rather than a Christopher Columbus style conquering exploration view of space, like I said earlier, as a great unknown, they always say the great unknown. We seem to have a good understanding. It's on all the walls, on all the pillars, and all the temples. Is, you know, it wasn't unknown to us. We've been looking at it for thousands of years. Made a 365-day calendar, charted all these zodiacs, right? The light was shining into some of the temples at certain hours of the day, at certain times, at certain, like, it wasn't the great unknown. Look at the Dogon with Sirius B and understanding without complex telescopes how these constellations and these star formations existed well before. It wasn't unknown. Not only was it not unknown, we had a relationship. Could you imagine somebody saying, do you know him or do you know her? And you used to date him and that was your problem. You say, do I know him? I know him so well, I divorced him. Let me stop. Okay, let me get back to it. Okay, let me. Grounding the wires before the fire. I'm gonna finish strong. I got 15 minutes. I'm gonna go at it. Viewing this notion of futuristic technology from the European compartmentalized standpoint could drastically limit the analytical scope of the investigation. When a culturally dislocated futuristic lens is utilized, the Viewmaster analogy, right, to cast an Afrofuturistic vision, problems with practical relevance, historical accuracy, and potential benefits toward African liberation can arise. This illustrates the imperative for an Afrocentric futurist voice to be included and centered in the larger Afrofuturism conversation. This is where we are now, though. Most people get their information from, you know, Facebook and Instagram. So disinformation is traveling at light speeds. And just to go through it, online bullying, all manner of aesthetic depravity, right? You can look at all the negative energy you want. Disrespect for women and for blackness and all that. You can just scroll and scroll all day and get an unlimited diet of destructive energy. It is free. It is at their fingertips. If you want to be dislocated, if you want to be disrupted, if you want to be destructive, if you want to devalue yourself, if you want to be anti-African all day, all you got to do is this. And they have a full-scale, eternal curriculum of self-destruction, degradation, and dislocation. That's what we up against. So when I say challenge day, then you got people bullying you. Okay, I say it's no wonder that Afrocentric, Amamazama, and Garvey Musumanu have contended that demeaning discourses in certain social and educational circles have driven African-American parents to homeschooling. So this idea of governance is what I call a big major part of the technology. So I said Locke despite Locke's. This is a pseudo Afrocentric from a movie that the Wayans brothers did, for those that don't know. But Afrocentricity, as Dr. Molefi Kete Asante teaches, is a paradigm to regain sanity. Yet too many people, here goes the tough part now. Yet too many people have attempted to distort its purpose for the fulfillment of fantastical, irrational, and irrelevant escapism. They don't want to do any work. They don't want to be African. They don't want to help African people get free. They don't believe in Pan-Africanism, but they will utilize and manipulate the aesthetics and distort talking points to appear as though they stand on the legacy so they can benefit from the momentum of the sacrifices made. Let's go. The future is greater degrees of self-governance and clarity. That's the future. I just saw this image on this cover of the book, The Black Family in Slavery and Freedom. And I say it all the time. Don't talk to me about all these lectures and pyramids if your children ain't seen you in 15 years and you don't get along with none of your siblings. You got some foundational work to do before you start hitting the lecture circuit. I'm sorry. Nobody's perfect. Everybody has things they got to deal with, but let's not be a complete contradiction to all the stuff we profess when we step up to the podium. And that's why I started today with my own confessions about coming to different realizations about separation from the elders. Because if you ain't going to be vulnerable and transparent and be human, and then you need to step aside and let somebody who's going to be real with the people help the people. Because I see them standing together and recognizing the power in proximity. When you sit at, I know y'all came from a time, most of the people watching today, where you didn't have the option to not eat with the family. Dinner time was dinner time. You didn't sit in your room and you didn't stay playing outside when it was dinner time. Now you get the same nourishment if you ate later, but there's something to be understood about the symbolism of that unbroken circle and the conversations that occur around a dinner table and just being in concert and proximity with the family, right? They understood the power of proximity, only to see 100 years later the enemy utilizing this principle and trying to give the illusion that proximity means progress. When we see people sitting at Woolworth counters and saying, if you sit next to me, you got the same degree of power, and it symbolizes progress because you near me now. Like you wasn't near me on the plantation. Like you wasn't a bed warmer on the plantation. Like you wasn't right there in the slave quarters on my property. But now they did a little switcheroo and said, oh, now you can come in the same building as me. Look, you're making progress. So they took what we understood, that being close means something. That's why the elders would say, don't be a stranger. You know, come back around. Let us look at you because it means something. There's some energy we gonna give to you. There's an ability to assess you. Your parents were able to look at you and see if you was gaining or losing weight, but before you even stepped up on the porch. Somebody could hug you and say, what happened? And you wasn't even planning on talking about it, and tears just start flowing out your face. This is serious high technology. When somebody could know the state of your spirit simply by embracing your body. But we want to look at microchips all day and not make the connection. I'm saying we're missing a part. Viewing humans as the highest technological manifestations in history and engaging the future with that reality ever present in our mind's eye can produce drastically different visions for our collective future. We need to view the family as technology. This is your highest technology. This is where you can produce the highest elevation and representation of creation. That's why in Kemet, you kept seeing a Sar and a Set and Osir. You kept seeing man, woman, and child. That was the symbol of everything. Not a microchip. You saw the helicopters on the wall. You saw all that kind of stuff. They had that stuff too. They had sophisticated irrigation systems. They studied the stars, but the center, the highest elevation is when people can understand their own biological clocks and nature and purposes and potentialities in such a way they can, at least if they don't stay together for their whole lives, get along long enough to create life, sustain, educate, properly rear an African locate. Like, this is what it's about. That's why you can become an ancestor without giving birth biologically, because your role was so important that all you had to do, man, there's so many people that just need to be adopted and so many people illiterate that just want to be taught to read. There's so many ways that you could live on beyond, man, let me go ahead. Learning from the past versus living in it. So now I got to give the tough love, because dislocation can prove exponentially problematic when attempting to envision a future through a borrowed or superimposed methodological lens, which is unknowingly light years behind other means of expressing and engaging, despite the more sophisticated methods having been labeled primitive, reprobate, or obsolete by conquerors, colonists, and revisionist historians. They got us thinking that old stuff is played out, but they can't rebuild the pyramids. They got us thinking that their way is better, but the more we follow them, the worse it is for our families. Weren't we outpacing them in terms of marriage as late as the 70s? So apparently us doing what we do, even if it's not better for everyone, that's why this whole idea of location is so important. When Dr. Molefi, Kete, Asante says, the problem is when you elevate a particular perspective as the universal standard. So if that's what they do and that's good for them, fine. But I think we can agree that for us, It does not serve us to have their view of the world in the future based on our past engagements with, okay, let me do it. Not only in name and linguistic structure are there similarities between Afrocentricity and Afrofuturism. I kind of covered that. The differentiation between Eurocentric and Afrocentric thought could be expressed as looking inward versus looking outward for the most advanced technologies and answers concerning the universe and our future. You want to make it plain for somebody? Somebody says, where do you get your answers from? Where do you get your vision of the future from? Where do you get your strength from? Where do you get your help from, right? If somebody says, the government, the police, right? The what? Where's the self-determination? And especially when somebody's trying to write your story for you. It's one thing to just not write your story and just float and go with the flow. But when somebody is purposefully and diligently trying to make sure that a manufactured narrative that's false becomes your reality, right? That real definition of power, right? We must exist in reality enough to create a new one for the next generation. I'm not saying you got to be completely pragmatic. If you spiritual, that's great. Be spiritual. I remember Dr. Asante saying that there were no atheists in Africa. So I'm all for it. But please don't get so into a pseudo spiritualism that, like when we had the recent conversation with Professor Smalls, he said, if you're not engaged in some type of spiritual act, to paraphrase, that gives food, clothing, and shelter and helps to rear up the next generation, he said, that's just a slave having a good time. And we got to know the difference between spirituality and slaves having a good time. So if I don't care how many shells you throw, how many crosses you wear, how many surahs you read, if it ain't producing nothing, no institutions, right? That was one of Dr. Asante's main critiques of these Black Marxists. All this talking, not one school, not one institution. You're not building nothing. You're just criticizing everybody. It's like watching the Muppets with those two old white men that sat in the balcony. Remember the Muppet Show with the puppets, and the two white puppets would just critique every show. Every show at the end of the Muppets, they would just hate on it. And that's a lot of these different ideologies. It's a whole lot of critiques, but it's not a lot of production. And we got young people that are being bombarded by disinformation, anti-African information. We have them being just completely sustaining a barrage of abuse, police abuse. That's what a teacher was paddling a 6-year-old. Like, they are up against it. They do not need us pontificating and philosophizing about something that has nothing to do with life and death as they know it. You at least got to meet them where they are to bring them to those higher levels of consciousness. So the futuristic hope, the transformative potential of grounding existing elements of Afrofuturistic dialogue and creativity within the Afrocentric paradigm will provide further avenues of historical connectivity, intellectual and cultural, I want to say sustainability, and potential for the creation and recreation of various modes of existing and expressing as African people throughout the diaspora. Celebrate, not subjugate. This contrast of concepts may explain the contentment nature and related reverence for natural order in its untampered state, differing greatly, that's the African one, differing greatly from the engagement with nature expressed historically from the European standpoint, which constantly seeks to subdue, subvert, and improve upon nature rather than emulate the evidence of boundless genius present in even the most cursory observations of natural laws and related realities. And if you look at the story of the brother who I showed you from Nigeria, who was responsible for the innovations in the internet, they said that although he was raised in a war-torn area of Nigeria, part of his ability to understand these complex mathematical equations came from his observation of bees. So if you just slow down and stop thinking that nature's for you to subjugate and control, and I made sure I included this whole imagery here because some people feel the same way about women as a part of that nature, right? If you just stop trying to control and look to counterbalance, appreciate beauty and genius and compliment, you can actually get more done, not just in relationships, but in the world. And I got to do a piece on this comedic touch, because when I was in Cairo, I was just look at the picture in the middle, how she's literally holding the brother up. And I talk all the time about that story about Asar and Aset, how you have a brother through jealousy and he's broken up into all these different pieces. And I say that's what sisters do every day to brothers who go out into the world and they're followed in stores, they're pulled over by the police, the people are crossing the street. Every day you getting cut. And you need a queen, you need a sister that can put you back together every day so that you can go back into the world and fight again. So every day in our homes, we are recreating that story of Asar and Aset when we as men are being broken down and beat up and cut up by society, and it's our women so often that put us back together. But if you want to attack the very source of your sustain, oh my gosh, that's a whole different lecture for a whole different day, and I'm gonna wrap this one up. Balance over barbarism. I see the sun, I see the complementary opposites, I see the balance, I see nature. I always see the children as blessing. I always see the children as blessing. I saw the smiting of the enemy image on the wall, but I didn't see anybody corporal punishing no children on the walls. All the images of children I saw, it was playing and running free and learning. And look like she's getting instruction. Look like the baby's getting instruction on the lap, right? And the other image is pointing up at the stars. See that? Like, okay. Because we want to do everything else. And we get wrapped up into thinking that we got to go to work to the point where we leave our children. You know, because we got to make money, so we leave the children at home by themselves to be educated by the TV and the internet. I'm not saying it's a choice, but if we're going to be a community and a village, I had 200 something students in my class this semester. If we're truly going to be a village, then all we need is a few capable elders who wouldn't be working anyway because they're past retirement age. If we're going to talk about Afrocentricity, or we're going to make a new reality and a new future based on these principles. Mentioning, referencing, and even drawing connections between Afrofuturism and African history, culture, and traditions differ greatly from centering our creative visions, Black perspective of thought, scholarship, and other advancements within the Afrocentric paradigm. The reason I wrote that is this. Somebody will say, well, I'm an Afrofuturist, and I heard so-and-so talk about the Dogon, and I heard so-and-so mention the Ankh. And I'm like, a shout out is very different than a foundational methodology for which you observe and analyze phenomena. So just because you shouted out some Black folks, just like with our discipline, just because you're teaching about some Black people, it does not mean you're doing what we're doing as a discipline in terms of an Afrocentric methodological analysis of phenomena. Don't get them confused, right? I always say different nuance and delineation, right? Two important words for critical thinkers. Our future can be most powerfully and beneficially manifested through a knowledge of self and an implementation of Afrocentric culture rooted in ancestral connections. I was going to go into how this applied to Black Lives Matter and her buying all these expensive houses and they asking where the money went, or how the website used to read, the Black Lives Matter website used to read, we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure. And I said, Western, and that's the one I saw in Cairo, requirement by supporting each other in extended families and villages. So I said, wait, I disrupt the okay. So I said, that's another lecture for another day. So in conclusion, but that's what happens when you're not located. When you're not located and you have talent and you receive a blessing, you don't know what to do with the blessing because you don't have what I call always an ancestral mandate. You know, when you're from the hood, they say you got to give back. You don't make it and not come back. You don't make it and not give back. That's part of who we are. If you go against that, then you're going against who we are as a people, as a family, as a community. You don't do all that work so that you could buy houses. You know, Afrocentricity, communal thinking with an esteem for nature and a connection and reverence to the ancestors should be at the foundation of building the world anew towards the goal of full liberation for African people. I'm gonna use this last 5 minutes to do this quick PSA because this is something pretty serious that I need y'all to understand. I know I can't engage with you just yet, but you can tell me on the Q&A. How many people have heard of the NFAC? That paramilitary group that got walk around with the guns, the black group. They say, you know, that they're the coalition, and they say that they're gonna help the Black people, right? The NFAC, right? So I said, I gotta show y'all some things here. I call it the Not Fooling Africans Coalition. So if you saw them at Standing Rock and all that, they was out there with the guns. And I said, what kind of group of Black people walk around with guns and don't get arrested? I said, this is interesting to me. And I was watching some specials And this, let me do this so I can show you both. I was watching some specials and they were showing the, I'm gonna show you the brother. Let me show you a clip real quick. For those who don't know, I'm gonna catch you up. Let me show you this one first, because this is important. I was watching a video where a young lady was saying, we are teachers and we are lawyers and we are out here training. And I said, he got black people out there with guns training? Look at him. This is him answering the question.
About who you are and what you want. What will you say with your own words?
Real quick.
I'm going to use the words that a young child said to me the other day when I was in Washington, D.C. A child said this. Please forgive them. They've never seen anything like this before, and they've never seen anyone like you before.
Now, I know there's some people in this room that are elders, and I know y'all got what they call spiritual discernment. So I know some of y'all already feel like something ain't right. I know that some of y'all don't see no type Malcolm energy and no type Kwame Nkrumah, not even no Winnie. Yeah, I know y'all. Some of y'all's like, wait a minute, I've been a revolutionary for a long time. You know, like people who use drugs, they can spot another drug user. People who, you know, are into criminal activity can spot another criminal, right? Cops be making other cops even when they're in plain clothes. So if we revolutionaries, we like this. You know, they say game recognized game, but he don't seem familiar, right? So let me show you a couple of things real fast, and then I'll get right to the Q&A. Because I didn't know if I wanted to show you him as a DJ. Because I don't... Because then the whole thing is he's not a real DJ, and they say he was. Okay, so and I said, but I used to be a DJ, and I do a lot of work in the community, so you can't say that, Professor. I said, maybe I should show the people when he went to run for president. I said, maybe if I show when he was trying to be the president, same guy, right? Right? So when I say something ain't right, and people following him around training with guns, let me show you a little clip of him talking when he was running for president. Because now he's a revolutionary. This is just 2016. He was running for president. He's sitting with his colleagues. Watch what he said.
John Fitzgerald Johnson.
John Fitzgerald Johnson. Notice they didn't say Grandmaster Jay or whatever he is now.
Let me thank all of my esteemed colleagues who thought it not robbery to come here to Lake Charles, Louisiana, while the rest of the country is distracted by the circus that our political process has become. And I thank you all for taking the time out to come here. I truly mean that.
That's a real different energy than he had when he was outside. I was watching a video that I just want to share with y'all in closing, and I'm gonna show you why. Let's do. So I study a lot of hip hop, and I look at what the young people are doing. A lot of young people are, you know, having a lot of violence going on. So I try to understand some of the violence. I'm gonna show you a clip from a video that was talking about Memphis, Tennessee. Very, very, very violent Memphis, Tennessee. A lot of murders going on, and people are going on social media and mocking each other's, you know, family members and things. It's really a lack of humanity. You know, a lot of these young people are making songs about other people who have been killed as, you know, other communities suffering, grieve. You have people making anthems and teasing them about it and laughing about it, which causes more violence and more murder. And I remember, you know, gang violence and things, but I don't remember young people 13 and 14 celebrating murders, even of innocent people getting caught in the crossfire. They're making these rap songs about, you know, how great it was and how funny it is. And they're making t-shirts. And it's really just a real degradation of the people's own humanity and their spirit, just to be in a position where they're comfortable celebrating that level of destruction. So in trying to figure this out, I was watching a video and I got to a part that made me think, and I'm gonna show you a few seconds. Watch this portion and let me know if somebody looks familiar.
Hybrid gangs, smaller mobs, and cliques within the sets going renegade, warring with each other.
See where there was an older person running everything, but it's been changing a lot. And a lot of these young kids with these offset groups, they're totally different.
He looked very familiar to me with a shirt that said police on the sleeve. He looked very familiar. And I said, I don't know too many black men that wear these kind of glasses. Maybe it's a coincidence. Can't call nobody an agent unless you got paperwork. I'm just saying allegedly. I'm just saying somebody need to ask the brother if he know this other brother. If these are two different people, then I need to see them in the same time in the same place. And I need to know where y'all got y'all glasses and a similar voice too, right? So was he impersonating a police officer or was he impersonating a revolutionary? But if you don't study history, like Asa Hilliard says, our brains are like supercomputers. The more memory we have, the better we're able to engage phenomena and predict what's going to happen. So if you want to know what the future is going to be, the future is going to be Freedom of Information Act documents 20 years later tell us what we should have already known by looking back at Eugene Roberts and William O'Neill and Fred Hampton and Malcolm, and how they put these people in charge, and how they talked at the assassination hearing of Dr. King, how they were talking to other black leaders, the safer black leaders they were going to put in that position. So where did he come from? You was running for president, being a DJ, now you leading the whole movement. You got black folks running out there with guns. So if something bad happens in the future to a lot of black people as part of this group, I just want to put it out there. It looked like the same guy to me. But then he wearing an ankh in an article that says NFAC leader Grandmaster Jay facing state charges for allegedly pointing a gun at officers. They connecting our symbolism. Ooh, you better stay a step ahead. You wonder why black identity extremism, they start talking about more science. See, we just minding our business doing what we do. But you gotta have counterintelligence. You gotta look at what other people are doing with your symbolism. When I first joined the fraternity in college, the worst thing you could do is to act like you part of it. That's going to have, if you want to have a bad night on a college campus, act like you part of one of them fraternities that you're not really a part of unless somebody approach you. Because everything you do reflected on us. And if you ain't go through what we went through, yeah, so him wearing this ankh with no explanation of why he's wearing it, and then plastering this symbolism, I wouldn't be surprised if a couple months from now, they be talking about us the way they talk about the Moors and the NOI and the Hebrew Israelites. We might just be next on the list. And I see it's like chess. We got to stay 5 steps ahead. It's 3-dimensional chess. Why would they pick that picture? We know nothing's by accident. I worked in the media for over 15 years. He's not wearing an ankh in most of the pictures. This is an effort. And who points a gun at police officers and no shots are fired in Liz? With that being said, Asante Sana, we can do a quick Q&A.
Well,
I yield my time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aaron Smith, and everybody. You can unmute just for a couple of minutes and give him a big applause. This was a dynamic lecture. And I want to say to Dr. Smith that I think this is. I've heard you and all the lectures I've heard have been fantastic. But I think today you outdid yourself.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you taught us, but not only did you teach us, you gave us new concepts. This concept, Afrocentric Futurism, is going to become a major aspect of any discussion about speculation in the future. Because what you did, you separated Mark Derry's notion of Afrofuturism. You took it apart, because to say Afrofuturism is almost like saying Afro-Marxism. It's like saying, Afrofeminism. I mean, basically, you're either a Marxist or you aren't. And if you are Black, you can't say Black Marxist. You are Marxists who probably maybe have dark skin, but there's no such thing as Black Marxists. I mean, they're Marxists. I mean, you're either a Marxist or you're not. And so what you did with Afrofuturism is to say, look, what we need to be talking about is Afrocentric futurism. There's futurists. There are all kinds of futurists. There are Chinese futurists. There could be, as you pointed out, European futurists. But Afrocentric futurism is a different thing than Afrofuturism. And I think you made that distinction very clear. And I think your definition will hold. I would just like to add to it, instead of just, this concept that Afrofuturism has, which talks about speculative fiction, that the concept of Afrocentric futurism includes fiction and nonfiction, or it's just not related just to write novels and short stories about the future. It is also how we write history and theorize about the social institutions of societies and so forth. But for me, This was an inspirational, brilliant presentation, and I want to also thank you for the part that you gave on Grandmaster Jay. I saw that video when it first came out, and we were all shocked at Stone Mountain, Georgia. And we said, look at those brothers. And the tape seemed to be, there were like maybe 5,000 of them. I understand that that was just repeating the tape over and over again of about 100 people. But so you see that our community is being inundated by images and ideas and memes and concepts that are in fact intended, like the Willie Lynch letter, to get us engaged into distractions. And that's what we have got to teach our people, our community and our people to do, to weigh things. And this to me figures into all the conversations we have about conspiracy theories. So in fact, sometimes when we think there is a conspiracy, there really is a conspiracy. So we just need to be real careful, and you have pointed that out. So at this time, I'm going to open up the question and answers, and I'm going to ask if there are people who do have questions. You can please state your questions, and then the rapping professor will answer.
Hi, I'm Leah from Virginia, and I wanted to make a comment about the futurists. I was involved with teaching kindergartens, coding and programming in South Florida, and it didn't go over very well because the system, the school system, the public system was not interested in the Black children in kindergarten learning coding and program. I mean, the very basic, the very simplistic. It wouldn't be difficult for a professional teacher to teach it to a kindergarten. And then fast forward to high school, teaching high school. I live in a rural area now and in Virginia, and they are building a school, a new school that they haven't built a school here in like 80 years. However, they're building a room for coding. And when I taught in the old buildings, the old schools, they only picked certain children, certain students to do the programming and coding. And now they're building a new building. They're saying they're going to have a coding and programming room. And it's really so backwards. Our African or Akibalan children are so far behind. And that's my statement. And I really thank you, Professor Smith, for your presentation. And the question I want to ask you is, Akibalan, I don't know whether I'm saying the word correctly, but my granddaughter asked me, well, everybody says African. And so I was trying to tell her that I learned from this particular meeting a few weeks ago that Nigeria, the name Nigeria is not even an original Kemet or African term. So I know that Africa was created, the name was created by a European. So how can we get more people to use Akibalan instead of African? Thank you so much.
Yeah, we have to stabilize them first.
Oh, okay.
Earlier, we were talking about, we have some things to do before we do other things. I made the analogy about the lectures, around the world when your family's in disarray and you don't get along with any of the people you're related to. Like I made that analogy about the young people dying in the street. If you come to somebody whose, brother just been shot and you start talking about the difference between the Kush, the Akibalan, Africa, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Kemet, you lost them. So you got to understand, like when you get taken to the ER, before they do anything, they stabilize you first. They can't operate on you before they stabilize you, or they can kill you with what's designed to save you. Ooh, you can actually do more harm than good if you don't stabilize the subject first. So if I'm self-hating, I don't need a linguistic debate. Okay. I need to love myself. If I don't even know how to feed myself to give myself life, and instead I'm feeding myself death, literally putting chemicals and poison into my body, then I need to stop killing myself before I start debating semantics. And I think that's the part we usually miss. As Afrocentric scholars, like the Crisis of the Negro Intellectual, we are so far along this journey sometimes that it's hard to see back from where we've come. And to remember when we had no interest in this information whatsoever. And for many of us, there was a time throughout our lives where we existed in that state, where we actually rejected this kind of information and this kind of Africanian aesthetics. So just like in any religious situation or any developing spiritual system, you have to remember when you had no interest and weren't a part of this, and see how best to engage people who are at that level. You have to meet people at their level. And right now, people are worried about moratoriums on rent and evictions. They're worried about jobs. They've been given $1,400 to sustain themselves for the last 9 months, right? So, and I think for us as a people, we need to table certain discussions or relegate them to our certain spaces. When we're just alone talking as scholars who've been doing this for 40 years, oh, it's great. We can have a meeting of the minds and talk about all the things that are more trivial and speculative and nuanced. But in terms of where we are right now and envisioning this future for our people as a collective, we need to realize that we are dying. And we should not run up so far ahead that the rest of us get swept in the other direction. And that's kind of where we are now, where the masses of our people don't care what we call it. We just need to have love for it, whatever we call it. And then, because honestly, throughout all of those different iterations of the name, there's the same foundation. You still have totems, you still have ancestral veneration, right? All those names still include all that. So we need to have that foundation in place. And then honestly, if we're going to accentuate agency, there's going to be some room for self-determination. There's going to be some room for people to create new theories and new names. But what you don't create is a new foundation. You don't start disrespecting elders and ancestors. You don't start, like those are things you don't do. You don't be anti-nature or out of balance with nature and life. But if you want to create a name, I think that's less important than the creation of a new culture. And right now we're dealing with a superimposed alien culture that we've adopted as our own. And whatever we call that, it's still equally as evil. And whatever we call what we have, is equally as beneficial if we just only understood its value.
All right, next person. Another comment? Okay, Dr. Dove.
Yes, Dr. Smith, I just want to say how wonderful your presentation was, how much I learned from it, how grounded you are, what a pleasure it is to work with you. And thank goodness we have you in the department. So that's all I wanted to say. There are lots of things that I would like to discuss at another time, like the externalization of the inner, that all the things that are being invented are things that are actually within us. They're becoming materialized as these objects that can be bought and sold. But within us, we have the capacity to do all these things that the contraptions are trying to teach us. And sometimes it takes away from who we are. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I don't know if everybody was here in the beginning, but I was shouting out Dr. Dove's book, African Mothers, Bearers of Culture, Makers of Social Change. And I was so impressed by the ability to reconceptualize women. Because just like with this future conversation, we are not given a conceptualization of women that places them in their proper context, helps us to play a role in them reaching their full potential, understands our obligations of protecting them, our potential to produce, to cooperate. Like that's not what we're given. You see what the rap videos give. You see what the news, like you see what we're given. So these young Black men are not being told about how their bodies and hormones are going to change. And they're not being instructed as to their complementary opposites. And we are so sexually suppressed and in denial of our own youth and the realities of urges and energies that we don't even have an Afrocentric conversation about what is to come and how you implement that in a positive way. I was studying some rites of passage for African young people, and they were showing how the women would take the young women, and the men take the young men. And they said bluntly, in these ceremonies, the older women would teach the younger women about intercourse. They would teach them about their bodies and pleasure and intercourse. And I was like, we have people who won't even talk to their children about these kind of things.
That's right.
And here you have a culture that's like, no, this is how, and this is what it means. You know, this is what you're actually doing and connecting. This is the spiritual realities and the connections you're making with another person so you can value it properly. Nobody's having these conversations with young men. So when I'm just reading your book about, you know, who women are, what role women have played, what is the purpose and how critical it is to society and a nation, it's like these are the kind of lessons that young men need. So when they have these urges, they need to understand why these urges exist. Why you are so drawn to women is not just, you know, for these purposes that the media is telling you, but it's really to build and to procreate and to, you know, to build a nation and to protect one another and hold each other up. And I just, you know, just my firm suggestion for those who haven't got the book, make sure you get it because we're just not getting those lessons. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, Prof, can I?
Yes, go ahead, Professor Langmuir.
Professor, I prefer the word X there. I don't want to pronounce the biblical Aaron or the Weston Smith. I just
okay, right.
That's all good.
Well, hey, he and I have had this discussion, Brother Kabuma. He's working on it. I'm working on it for him.
Okay. I was really moved by your presentation, my brother. There's a statement you said that moved me. You said, how can we look at the future through the lens of the oppressor? The problem, the opposite then, is that we should look at the future through the lens of the liberator. The problem is the liberator, the quote unquote liberator, has been Alexaized, bastardized, emasculated. That is why the young people are going astray. Who is the liberator? So the oppressor has the upper hand. That's why Grandmaster Jay, the mind has been manipulated. He's looking for the liberator, he's not seeing the liberator because the liberator has been emasculated, bastardized, westernized, and imposed with this thing called money. This thing called money. Make reference to 1400. If people don't have that, they will not pay rent. They'll become homeless. This is where the idea of Egypt does not ring a bell. That is why the embassies are flooded in Africa, of everybody going to the West. Money, survivor. So the liberator, the African liberator, the Malcolm X are not there. The Martin Luther King, they are not there. Their minds have been Europeanized. You made reference to the woman. The images they watch on the movies is that the woman is not relevant. And they bombard it every day. So the African woman now is irrelevant. They show the African woman like a beggar to them. And this has been going on for years, Professor X. It has been going on. I don't know where Afrocentricity leadership can help with curricula. Because as I'm talking to you, look at the young men who are graduating. Look at the shoes they are wearing. My brother, look at the embroidery. Look at their hats. Where is Afrocentricity? Where is it coming? We have African American Studies departments. We have African History departments. Where are we going wrong, my brother? I'm talking to you because I'm at Howard. And whenever I'm referring to Afrocentricity, there is something I'm begging them to learn to have self-dignity. I'm begging them not to wear artificial hairstyles. Why should I beg my African women to wear their natural hair and still be beautiful? Why should I beg to do that? Why should I beg them to read my book to do that? So the pseudo-liberator that they look up to are not there. That's why the Grandmaster Jay is looking for money. Thank you. I see Professor Dove's hand is up.
Yeah, before I pass to Dr. Dove, one of the things I noticed in terms of what they call multi-layer solutions, I heard the reference to coding earlier, and oftentimes there's coding beneath the code. Like people recently realized that government agencies, have deals with Google and Microsoft and things like that, where certain information is able to be accessed through government agencies. So there's another layer to the code. So you might know that your phone could do a certain amount of things, but somebody who designed your phone could pick up your phone, press certain things, and access a program that you didn't even know was there. And that is the way this early curriculum is working in an anti-Afrocentric way. There's an like even Dr. Asante said it in the video, through Europe's engagement with Africa, on a negative level from its inception. So when you have these young people, like Malcolm said, only a fool will let the oppressor educate his children. You think, oh, it's clean in here. Oh, the food is nice in here. There's another program running. So as they become future lawyers, future doctors, the only Black person in their grade, the only Black family on their block, yeah, that program is running really good as far as achievement and skills. So you're like, wow, this brother's on point. And then he becomes like the brother in the Breonna Taylor case, who they're saying that Mitch McConnell's going to bring to the Congress. The Black man who turned the blind eye in the Breonna Taylor case, Daniel Cameron. Mm-hmm. Right? So they look at your ability and your skill set, they see that surface level program, but they don't know that there's been another program running the whole time that's so anti-African that by the time they reach the 5th and 6th and 7th grade, oh, it's fully integrated and their virus is spread to every component of that motherboard. So by the time they get to college, it doesn't matter if they're at Howard. It don't matter if they go to college in Africa. Like Dr. Asante said, he never saw an African university, even on the continent, because those second layer solutions to African self-determination have become so effective. And like you said, they will even put fake exits and fake solutions. And so you look for a liberator, you look for leadership, you look to be more African. So you go to certain institutions and you go to certain people and you go to certain spiritual systems and dogma, and you don't know that they've been infiltrated. The Panthers said that at one point, 1 in every 4 Panthers they said was an agent. So once you have it that thoroughly, infested and infected, then we need to look at the future as a potential reset. Like they're talking about with the economy, we need to look at a curriculum, educational, cultural reset. We're not looking to try to make this right. We're not looking to figure out a way to do this with that. We need to understand that this ain't working. Now, if we're not going to totally divorce from it, we at least got to separate from it enough, like I call it a quarantine period, that now people can really understand. Because I was doing a documentary one time and I said that people need to quarantine. I think the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said something similar, where he was like, yo, if you've been up under your oppressor so long, you got to get away just to get your mind right. And it happens in relationships. Now you're around somebody so much that you don't even know how bad it's hurting you. Some of y'all been in a job that's so toxic that you didn't even know that some of your physical ailments were due to the toxic environment until you got to break away from the job and say that job was making me sick and crazy. And we don't realize that because we've been with this oppressor for hundreds of years, so we don't even know how crazy we've become. And when we give our students and our young people over to these institutions and these people, we don't even think about the second layer, programs that are running where they'll come home in 10 and 20 years and think that you're not intelligent. And that's why down south, the elders would say, don't go to that college and come back stupid. They knew enough to know that even though I might not be able to read and write, right, at least I'm not stupid. That's right. But I think Dr. Dove was going to say something.
Yeah, well, you said everything, but I just wanted to add my bit, which is that while we discuss the horror and that we live in, we almost always must live with hope. Otherwise, there really isn't any point in living. I don't believe there is. So, as we develop what should be the Afrocentric Futurism, that's what we're doing all the time. We're piecing together who we are and how to produce the information and the model that we can give to people. It's all about knowledge, as the ancestors, as the ancient knew. But we have to have this victorious consciousness. We have to believe that things can change. Otherwise, why live?
And I always say African people should never be pessimistic because we have the greatest tradition of what I could compare to is disruptive technologies. Afrocentricity is an intellectual disruptive technology. And like Dr. Asante said, we were able to convince the academicians they were teaching lies. So what they planned has never come to pass. What we wanted has always been more of the eventual reality than anything our oppressors ever envisioned. They said slavery in perpetuity. In a few generations, we was out. Harriet Tubman's vision of America is more of what we exist in now than anything any slave master ever envisioned. When you look at what Johnson was thinking about and what Wallace was saying, segregation now, segregation forever, Dr. King's vision of America is far more a reality than anything any Dixiecrat segregationist ever envisioned. So we as African people, especially in America, we have always controlled the future despite whatever they said and have done. We got a record of like 100-1. Whenever they say it's going to be one way and we say it's going to be another, it goes more our way than their way. They said slavery. They said segregation. They said what we said, despite having less resources, despite being under them in so many ways, our ability to be self-determined and Afrocentrically located to decide our own future and the future of this nation has proved more real and more relevant every single time. That's why knowing history is so important. Whatever we want to happen in the future is going to happen. So I definitely agree that we should have victorious consciousness, at least based on the fact that we've overcame so much, so many times before.
And yeah, and I would just add, I mean, wonderful comments. Steve Biko, for example, his version, his idea of liberation for South Africa, political liberation, certainly came to be representative of the reality that the people experienced. I mean, we can talk about other things, but in terms of whether or not the apartheid people had the proper understanding of the future, or Steve Biko, whom they killed, Biko had the proper understanding. And in fact, long live the spirit and the power of Steve Biko, who was one of the inspirations of my own life and my own work. So we have time for about one more.
I see a hand up, Doc.
All right, go right ahead.
Francis, I'm sorry, K. Francis.
Is it Francis?
Yes.
Go ahead, Francis.
It is Quatin. Yes, Professor Smith, I think
Quatin.
This is
Yeah, thank you,
probably, yeah, the best presentation I've listened to anywhere. Could you please put this together in a book form, please?
Oh yeah, the book is coming out. The book is on Afrofuturism. We have a collection of scholars that are going to be participating. I'm editing the volume, but it should be out by next year. So 2022 you should have the book.
Okay,
so it's gonna be
thank you.
Afrocentric Futurism. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Brother Quate. Okay, any other, okay, I think this was, look, let me just give you again the Zoom number for the next lecture, which is going to be justice. We want to thank Dr. Smith. And in fact, we're having a naming ceremony for him. And I wanted to mention this. We have a naming ceremony coming up in the fall. So you want people to know that. So he's and
you told him about the center too, Doc, right?
And we have the opening of the Center for Anti-Racist Research at Temple University that we initiated through the President Englert, and that's going to be opening up hopefully very soon as well. And we want everybody to be a part of that. But on May,
the conference is in the fall. I want to make
the
sure
conference. Yeah, Dr. Smith and Dub, you guys know the date on that, or you're just announcing that we'll have a date for it coming up, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, on the 23rd of May, the Zoom information for the 4 o'clock meeting is 842-2906-4575. And please send that Zoom information to all of your friends and as well as your mailing list, because Michael Cord, the angriest Black man in America, is really a popular, well-known attorney here and host for WRD, but is a brilliant thinker, and he is also an adjunct in the Department of Africology and African American Studies at Temple.
You got a hand up, Doc. I just want to let you know.
Okay, all right. So
Yes,
go ahead.
excuse me, Dr. Asante. I just want the young man to know that your seniors from WURD miss you drastically, and I'm proud of you, and I want you to continue the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
I appreciate you, and thank you for today.
Thank
Peace.
you.
Love you.
Thank you, Sister Jackie.
And I think it was William Johnson that was the last one too.
Is it possible to get recordings of the prior sessions?
The sessions will be they're on the YouTube.
Oh, they are already.
Under the Molefi, Kete, Asante Institute lectures, MKA lectures.
Okay. I'll go there and find it. Thank you.
All right. All right. And so, okay. Any other hands? Is that it?
I got one question for you.
Okay, go right ahead.
How do I be able to get the book you have, Herodotus on Egypt?
Boy, you really are a researcher. You probably only the second person in the world who know I wrote that book. I think I can try to find a copy for you. But okay, Brother Bingley, right?
Correct.
Okay, so Brother Bingley, give me a couple of weeks to look for it. It's in one of my libraries somewhere. Okay.
Okay.
All right, Asante Sana. You guys have been wonderful. This is wait a minute. There's G8.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just a Taylor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think everybody's here. I think everybody's here, right? Everybody's finished, right? Thank you. Okay, who's that? Oh, Sister Joyce. Okay, go ahead, Sister Joyce. I'm sorry.
Yes, I've been trying to speak for the last couple of sessions.
Okay.
But I got the opportunity today.
Okay.
And along with Dr. Lasana and Dr. Asante and you, Professor Smith, I think the lectures have been so inspiring. And I was glad to hear about the conference because that was my comment previously, that we need to have a coming together of the like minds and even the minds that aren't there, like Black Lives Matter, as Professor Smith had kind of referenced. You know, still we need to try to bring the awareness to all of these different splinter groups of the African-centric world, so that we can somehow, the Afrocentric futurism can become more of a global conversation and language that we use, because I believe in our ability to do better. And we all have to have that ability, that knowledge, that hope, that belief that we have the ability to do better, to come together. And how do we make that happen? So if the conference, if it's going to be open to, and specifically reaching out and whatever I can do to help that with Black Lives Matter mindset, with even Umar Johnson mindset. I admire him he is working to open up schools in Delaware. And I think that is a very good step in the right direction, and that we need to learn how to not speak negatively about one another publicly, but how do we come together to address whatever those differences are.
Thank you so much, Sister Joyce. Really appreciate you. And appreciate all the support that you and Brother Mangalisa have always given to us. And we're just very, very proud of our community. This is a beautiful, wonderful community of people. And in fact, it gives me great inspiration every time I listen to the people speak and the information that they have. And I want to thank you. And I think Dr. Smith, is that the last one?
Yes, I think you're all good.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Smith. And,
Love
and
y'all.
more power to you. I'll see you next week. All right. Peace.